As cybersecurity is one of the themes of the 5th edition of How to Web, it's not really normal to have on stage one of the most successful companies in Romania and also one of the biggest security companies in Europe, Bitdefender. So I would like to invite on stage Florin Talpes, the CEO of Bitdefender, to talk about future developments and opportunities in cybersecurity, and also Bogdan Iordache. I don't think he needs any introduction anymore, but he's the founder of How to Web.
Morning, everybody. Hope you had a good party last evening. I did.
Asta seamănă cu țambalul.
Okay. So, my name is Bogdan Iordache. Once upon a time, I was the co-founder of How to Web and CEO of How to Web. And now I'm just enjoying the event, as you do. And today I have the pleasure to have next to me Florin Talpes, who is one of the leading Romanian, well, Eastern European entrepreneurs, I'd say, in technology. CEO of Bitdefender, which is one of the biggest security companies in Europe, as Anka was mentioning. Mr. Talpes, so every time we do an interview, I start by asking yourself to briefly present Bitdefender. So what is Bitdefender now, and how was the company transformed in the last years?
Okay. First of all, Bitdefender is a technology company, so we don't have a unique business model or something like that. It's about technology innovation, and we are in security or cyber security, but basically, we are a technology innovation company. When you are saying technology, you are saying innovation anyway. But we are innovating continuously from the very beginning, and we are even more innovating now. But it's about technology.
So when was that beginning? The company was started in 1999.
In fact, initially, let's say Bitdefender was incubated into a different company, and Bitdefender spun off in 2007. In fact, so
okay,
our first
independently,
our first projects related to security go back to mid-90s.
Okay, so from the mid-90s until now, the security landscape had a lot of changes, a lot of developments, but probably not so many as we'll see in the near future. What were the most, I don't know, important changes in the last 10, 15 years, very briefly, regarding security technology?
I will mention only one, which is a key one. So let's go back to 95. I remember we used to be, and we are, neighbors of Bulgaria. 5 to 6 years after what we named revolution. At that time, Bulgaria didn't perform very well. So let's say the life was poor in Bulgaria. The young and educated ones used not to be very happy with the situation. Same time, their leaders somehow evangelized the population that the root for this, let's say, poor performance is not their management of the country. I'm talking here about the leaders of the country, but it's about the capitalist system itself. So the young ones, like Bulgaria is very similar to Romania. You could find a lot of IT skills in Bulgaria at that time. So the young ones started to revenge on the capitalism system. So individuals, real individuals, started to write viruses at that time. So I should say a key characteristic of that time was the bad guys used to be individuals. and most of the times used to be young ones, just an individual, for different reasons, like a hobby, like activism, like Bulgarians used to do, okay, but was individuals. Today, we see a world which is very similar to the corporate ones, in which you see R&D investments, large teams like R&D labs working on the bad side, on the dark side of the world, okay. Significant investments, once again, managed like corporations, looking to performance. Some of these teams are much better in, let's say, in terms of managing the performance that on the good side companies, okay? So this is a fundamental change. There are not any more security teams fighting against individuals, but there are security teams funded, fighting with, let's say, bad or dark side teams, very well funded.
So basically we have security teams fighting each other. Some of them on the dark side, some of them on the good side.
Yeah, in terms of knowledge, we could say that the knowledge is very similar.
Okay.
So in terms of knowledge, to be on the dark, on the good part of the world, you should have the same kind of knowledge.
So where stands the antivirus in this equation? Because like security companies, as we know them now, were created around antivirus solution. Where does the antivirus stay now in this context? Is it dead? Is it still an option for future growth for companies, security companies?
First of all, what is that antivirus? Okay, so today, if let's say close to 20 years ago, what antivirus was very clear, has a very clear definition, and everyone has the same understanding of antivirus. Today, that's not the same situation. And let me explain a little bit. So let's talk about the consumers, the home users. The security industry educated the market for around 20 years about antivirus. So the consumers are naming antivirus any kind of security they want for their laptops, desktops, or mobile devices. If you take a look to the keywords, to the searches on Google, antivirus is by far the first word, the number one word used by the consumers when they are searching for security. If it's about, let's say, retrieving a lost or stolen device or anything else, they are using antivirus. So the companies which are targeting the consumers market are using antivirus for doing the marketing. If you're not using antivirus, you should miss your target. Because this is a way the consumer learned to name the security products. So this is one way. A second one, if we take a look, by example, to Bitdefender guys, the guys from the labs, which are the research ones, they are the ones of the most specialized professionals in security. For them, antivirus and virus means a teeny part of the security, very well defined, which that teeny part of the security is like 1 per 20 of what a security solution is providing, or even going down, more down.
So antivirus is 5% of what security is.
Even less.
All about, yeah.
Even less. Okay. So when you go to after an antivirus product as a consumer, probably the antivirus, as it is named by the professionals, is just a teeny part. Now, if we go back to different definitions and different views, let's take a look to the new kids on the block, the new companies which are coming with new security technologies. For them, antivirus means X, what is dead. Why? Because let's say the newcomers need, let's say the current players in the market to fail, to fight against them, okay? So antivirus means what used to be but is not anymore useful. If we take a look to the VC world, to the venture capitalists, you know, a VC has an exit time of about 3 to 5 years. So the VCs are more related to the new kids on the block. So,
and they also relate on stable definitions for the 3 to 5 years holding period.
3 to 5 years, preferable 3 years. So when they are looking to antivirus for the VCs, antivirus again means something you shouldn't invest in. It's something that happened years ago, okay, is not anymore the future. So once again, in going to the enterprise security professionals, they are very similar to the security professionals we have in Bitdefender. They are looking to antivirus like at a very tiny part of the security.
Okay, so we have these different views on the antivirus, which if you allow me to make a conclusion, I'd say the antivirus loses interest. In the same time, security specialists know that, and they work on more complex security suits.
Yeah, it's true. But once again, virus means an application which replicates itself.
Yeah.
So it's not about losing interest. From looking to the threats, viruses are only a teeny part.
Right. So the number of viruses compared to other security threats is a part which is smaller and smaller. What are the other threats? What are the other threats?
So we are using more malware today. As professionals, we are using malware, okay? But there are a lot of threats you find, and let's say today as a consumer you are facing a lot what we call the phishing, okay? Mm-hmm. You go to a link to a website which is not, seems to be a legitimate link but is not real. It's a bad thing, bad things happening there. So through that, someone tries to get control of your device, gets penetrated your device, and through that get control of your data, okay? But there is what we call the surface of the attacks. It's really, really wide today, okay?
Okay, so probably is that because we see, you know, more mobile devices these days? What are the factors that influence this change of attacks from antivirus to malware and stuff like that? Is it just like the hyper-connected world that we live in?
In fact, it's about the new technologies. So every time new technologies are coming to the market, the landscape is changing. So the attacks are changing. And let's take a look to the home. Okay. So we have the mobile devices. That means, you know that, by example, for the enterprise, there are the bring your own device. In most of the companies, the BIOD is dominating. So rarely you find companies which are not, let's say, giving access to the employees to come with their own smartphone, okay? But this means new weaknesses for the security, in fact. So the mobile devices spread, which is huge today, means increasing the surface of the attacks. Give you another example. We are at home, and recently the most sophisticated houses could have what we call air condition management systems. Just a small device which is monitoring the air condition, okay? And today the new devices are connected to internet. These kind of devices, we name them things. They are part of the Internet of Things, okay? You don't know maybe, but generally these devices are storing the password of your Wi-Fi, of your home Wi-Fi. So, and if you take a look to these things, you find out that the things are designed such a way that you cannot upload a security application there. So they are storing the Wi-Fi pass, but they cannot, you cannot install a security application.
So right now, well, having multiple, one of the speakers yesterday said something like 20 years ago, you could have counted the number of microchips that you had in your house. It was countable. You kind of knew how many microchips you had. Right now, you can't count them anymore. I mean, and microchips will just go into everything that we have in a house.
This is a metaphor, I think you can count. And there are some researches showing by example, and I tell you, for example, in Germany. Germany is a good example for what will be the future, because Germany is one of the advanced in terms of maturity countries of Europe. So looking to the average number of internet connected devices a family has, the average in Germany is 20.
Okay.
So that means internet connected devices a family has. Look back, 10 years ago could be 2.
Yeah.
1.
A PC.
Today it's 20, it's increasing constantly. Okay?
Okay.
Because everything in the family, at the home, will be internet connected in the future.
So giving this changes in the landscape, how do you see a security company evolving in the next year? Where do you see the opportunities for growth or for new companies to be created? And
So
no secret plans, I mean, just...
Yeah. No. Let's say 2 main directions. One is home, okay, what we call consumers. And I have an iPhone here. It's a 5S. Once again, probably I'm one of the few who has a security application on the iPhone, because generally you cannot download a security application on your iOSs. Okay. So you have some problems, because if you are using a Mac OS, you can use a security application, but using an iOS, which is produced by the same Apple, you have to trust in the Apple God.
So do you have to hack your phone to get a security suite on it?
Not necessarily. Let's say 1.5 years ago, you could download a security application from the App Store.
Okay.
The name was Clueful and was produced by Bitdefender, but today you do not find it anymore. Okay. So there are devices, and the spread of these devices is huge today, which are protected only by the device manufacturer. If you take a look once again to the home, you find the things like your smart TV, your game console, let's say even your fridge, which could be today internet connected. I named air condition. A lot of devices at the house that are not protected. So one challenge for the future is to protect all these devices. So due to the technology changes, the attackers are finding this as being significant new opportunities for them to attack, to get significant data, and for us to protect.
Jokingly, I would imagine, a fridge in the future which has a malware that just orders 10 bottles of milk a day, so the grocery makes more money, or I don't know, would that work?
Could work. There are attacks today which are, let's say, using the Wi-Fi, which is okay. Once again, the things are not protected, so every attacker is looking for low-hanging fruits. That means every attacker is looking to the cost of the attack. If the cost of the attack is low, they will do it. That's like an opportunity. You are finding a wallet on the street. Okay, if you are not honest, you'll take it. This is what the attackers are doing. So in this case, we have seen situations in which the Wi-Fi password was accessed, and using the Wi-Fi, they accessed the local network, the family network. Through that, they accessed the laptop. The laptop was a business one, and they got access to the enterprise level. okay, through remote access. So the damage could be really consistent. Just using a vulnerability a user has, provided by the fact that that thing, that device is not protected, but it's storing key data.
So that's one area of opportunities. Let's say the home, and the second one
is what we call family.
Okay.
Because you have to look also to the user. Okay,
yeah.
The user is mobile. The user doesn't stay at home all the day. Okay, or there are some devices like this one which are used everywhere. Okay, the fridge probably will not be necessarily mobile. Okay, go with your fridge, but you have to protect family and family devices.
Although a fridge which walks with you in the living room seems to be a good idea, but you can order beer so much faster.
To the cave for the wines.
Yeah. So the second one, which would be the second one? Is it the enterprise space, which
yes.
is also changing,
So
right? By
here is happening something very interesting, and hopefully a lot of you have businesses there. It's about the cloudification. So you see, everything is going to the cloud. In our opinion, when you are looking to the cloud, you see some infrastructure there. And a key part of the infrastructure is what we call data centers. Okay? And you are looking to the data centers, you see a lot of virtualization happens there. Just give me an explanation. So if someone is trying to set up a business in the data center, we'll see a real one, a physical one, not a virtual one, a software-defined data center, let's say. We'll get the fact that it's really expensive. So it's about business continuity. When you're building a data center, you are providing services, anything like as a service, everything as a service. And let's say just be compliant with the business continuity of the data center. That makes you spend huge amount of money. Now, when you're looking to the data center, you are looking to a physical space. And you try to use the physical space as much as you can. Here interferes the virtualization. That means you have a number of racks, okay, in which you're, let's say, plugging in blades, but you want that a blade to be used at 100% potential. And here comes the virtualization. It's like, let's say, saying that one server, it's used by 1,000 operating systems same time, okay? And when you are talking about virtualization, we talk about completely new technologies in the market. That means the attackers get completely new opportunities for attacks. So for us, as Bitdefender, this, what we call the spine of the infrastructure of the cloud, protecting that, it's a key element of our strategy. And that's why Bitdefender invested a lot in the last 5 to 7 years in the security of the virtualization or security of virtualized environment or anything, or even virtualization. Okay?
So business-wise, this is a solution that you sell or which is operated by the cloud provider. Is it something that the enterprise should take care of?
Yeah, when you're talking about data centers, the data centers are not necessarily located to the XSPs. You could have your own data center. Mm-hmm. I suppose anyone has a kind of data center which doesn't comply with the regulations in terms of business continuity, but you have 1 or 2 racks of blades or something like that. Anyone has what they call the IT department and generate some data center, okay? Right. So that applies everywhere. But talking about virtualization, I give you an example of catching the attacks, okay? That comes back 2 years ago. Bitdefender used built virtualization technology inside the security technologies. So we are probably the first on the market which more than 10 years ago use virtualization to catch the attacks. And let me explain if you agree.
So if you, from what I get from you, if you look in the future, the opportunities that Bitdefender wants to attack, well, to approach, are more on the enterprise level than home level.
Let's say, fortunately or unfortunately, today we are in both businesses, home and business, home on enterprise. Okay, so we are following both opportunities. Today we don't see a trade-off between. So we have enough resources today to target both opportunities, but we'll see that in the future. So today we are building new technologies for both family and enterprise.
Which one do you think will have a faster growth rate? I mean, because there is not necessarily a direct correlation between the level of threats and the money which is spent on each side.
In my opinion, okay, if you take a look to the VCs, venture capitalists, which are somehow evaluating the businesses, there is a kind of misconception that if you are in the consumer space, the multiples a VC is paying are lower. But this is a misconception. If you take a look to the stock exchange, just take a look to NASDAQ, you see some crazy multiples on some consumer companies. The ones who are using multiples, when you talk about the value of a company, you are talking about multiples about net revenues or an EBITDA, okay, or profit.
Basically evaluating the company based on, let's say, annual revenue. So you, like, if you have 1 million in annual revenue and a multiple of 3, the value of company is 3 million.
Is 3, okay. Yeah. Or could be or your profit, if you have a profit of
so your company, if you have a $1 million company in annual revenue, it can worth 3 million or 10 million, basically depending on the
or could be
valuation multiple.
Even 100 million. That's crazy. Million. Okay, could be 100 million. And you find companies, let's say, just shooting for the consumer space, which are in that kind of valuation. So looking to those kind of valuations, this is a misconception that the consumer is lower paid than the enterprise one.
Okay, so as we see on that screen in front of us, unfortunately time is up, but we do have time for questions, and if you can raise your hand, my colleagues will bring a microphone.
Just before getting the question.
And I still have a last question for you.
In terms of security knowledge, I am the worst in Bitdefender.
Okay. Yes, and no questions about how to install an antivirus.
So my question is, if you could get back to 1995 again and tell us a bit about the landscape and about starting a software company back then.
Just saying something about...
Yeah, just how the landscape was. For example, if you could find developers or, well, back then there was no internet, so pretty much.
The answer is yes. Maybe not any of you know that IT is developing in Romania since at least 1958. 58. Okay, so Romania has an history of IT of more than 50 years, because Romania designed and built the first electronic computer in 1958, and used to be only 8 countries in the world to do that. So when we started, in fact, when the communists fall, a lot of IT skills and knowledge you could find in Romania. The IT ecosystem was really developed. You could find universities, you could find high schools specialized in computer science, research institutes in computer science, a market, a local and a regional market. When the communists collapsed, both markets, the domestic one and the regional one, collapsed. A lot of IT skills and knowledge became somehow free. Okay? So you could find a lot of really top IT skills and knowledge that time. And secondly, talking about security, maybe you can find out that from your parents eventually. During the 80s years, Romania stopped importation of technology. So during that time,
were we just importing, or maybe
just one or two pieces?
taking a?
But what we did was to do reverse engineering.
Okay.
So during the 80s, we used to get one computer from IBM, and maybe 200 professionals started to understand what the computer is and to redesign a similar computer with all hardware, software. So it's what we call reverse engineering skills. And these are basic skills for security.
So that reminds me of a very good line from Black Hat, White Cat, with somebody drinking forged whiskey, saying ours is better than the original. Maybe it was the case here as well. Second question over there.
Hey, currently more and more internet providers and the mobile providers offer their layer of security. Is there any need for the home user to install a security app on their phone or on their home laptop? Thank you.
Question, does anyone who has iPhone or iPad security? Okay. Who's using iPhone or iPad in this? Okay, so I see around, let's say 40, and we have one. Okay, this is a kind of percentage, and this is a high percentage here in this hall, okay? Because you could find 1 to 10,000 maybe, okay? So the answer is the perimeter is what we call the surface of the attack is really wide today, okay?
Yeah, but I'm saying the internet provider, let's say Vodafone, for example,
Yes.
is offering
Let's say
their
telecom.
telecom. They're offering their layer of security.
Yes.
Is there any need for the app? Does their security is good enough?
Let's say the ISP or anyone, for me, it's a channel. Okay, so that means if you're, let's say, providing security to the market, you can use that kind of channel. But that depends what you're doing with your device. Because let's say your connection with a mobile operator is only one part, is only one segment to all the flow. So the question is, the rest of the flow is protected by someone?
Because you have wireless connection and Bluetooth connection and... Okay, so one last question, and then it goes to you.
Nobody wants.
Wait a second.
Can we take a question from that part of the... Because we are asymmetrical, sorry for...
Okay.
Because most of the people are staying there, not here. But
okay. Hello.
My
yes.
question was, is there much opportunity in the virtual landscape since most of the virtualization solutions have security built in through hardware since the design?
I didn't got the question, so...
Neither did I mean, it's...
How much is security a problem in virtualization since most of the virtualization solutions contain security built in through hardware aspects, I don't know, in the microprocessor, for example?
This is not real, sorry to say. But today, unfortunately, and that's a question when you are going to cloud, it's what kind of data protection your your data center provider is using. Today, a lot of virtualized environment are not protected. Why that? I told you about, let's say, monetizing the data center. And when you talk about virtualization, you talk about density of virtual machines per blade, per hardware. So a data center provider wants to have as high as possible density of virtual machines per blade. The traditional security solutions are killing that density. That means me, which invested a lot in building a data center, I can provide only half or 1/3 of the capacity of data center. Why? Because of the security solution. What I'm doing, switch off the security protection. So pay attention, a lot of virtualized environments are not protected compared to the traditional physical ones.
One last question.
Hello, thank you. Bogdan mentioned black hat, white hat, And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on this changing dichotomy in the cybersecurity world, where the threats now come maybe from government agencies such as NSA, and on the other hand, road hackers such as people related to Anonymous maybe are not so much bad guys anymore?
Your question, if what's my position towards governments, if I consider them bad guys or good guys?
No way.
Yeah, a significant change in the landscape we have seen in the last years is that involvement of the governments in breaching security, not in protection, but in breaching security. So there is an Italian company which has a very good reputation, which is selling software legally. It's selling legally software to penetrate security solutions. So you can buy legally from the market solutions that are monitoring the security solutions, find vulnerabilities and penetrate them for monitoring the people. Your question is, who's buying that? My answer is governments. So the governments are buying that, okay? There is a very interesting situation with Microsoft today. So there is an European data protection directive which interdicts the let's say XSPs, any service providers, to get the personal data of European citizens outside Europe. They are forbidden to do that. Microsoft is a company headquartered in the United States. There is some legislation, US legislations, which in fact affords the US government to ask Microsoft, which control the data of the Microsoft users, to give access to an inbox, email inbox, stored on a server in Ireland. Why? Because this is a US headquartered company. But the data are stored in the EU. Okay? So we see that kind of situations today, okay? And due to different compliance, due to different interests, we see a very complex situation. So what I'm saying that the government mix in that, the government interest in breaching security systems complicated the market and provided new opportunities for the attackers and of course new opportunity for the security players.
And with this positive thought in mind of having more opportunities on either sides, I want to thank Mr. Talpes for joining us today